Hi there, my name is Arthur and I'm a real-time artist working in the VFX industry. One of the things I like to do at the end of every project is called post-mortem. This process can take many forms, but its main purpose is to reflect on your past experience to draw some conclusions and understand your weaknesses. Following my last video, I identified something that has been on my mind for a while. I've been using Unreal Engine for 8 years now, and I spent a lot of time improving my skills. But I still repeat the same actions over and over. With that experience, I have enough perspective to know what I need to cut down the repetition and improve efficiency. In this video, I want to walk you through the journey I took to improve my productivity. We'll cover everything Unreal has to offer to speed up your workflow and get you up to speed quicker and easier. The first place to look when you want to speed up your workflow is keyboard shortcuts. There's no point in learning every single one. Instead, learn the shortcuts for the task you repeat the most. In my case, I switch the coordinate system constantly. Without a shortcut, I have to let go of my pivot, cross the entire viewport, and click on the toolbar button. It's a tiny interruption, but when you repeat it hundreds of times, it adds up. Instead, let's open the editor preferences, keyboard shortcuts, and search for cycle coordinate. By default, you can see it's Ctrl backtick. Since I'm using an AZERTY keyboard, I changed it to square, which is the equivalent key on my layout. In this section, I'll share the shortcuts that drastically improved my workflow. This selection is definitely not exhaustive, but rather focused on hidden gems that completely flew under my radar. While most of them work on both QWERTY and AZERTY, I'll specify how I set it up when it's not the case. One quick note before we begin. I'll be using Unreal 5.7 on Windows, but everything I will show here is compatible with other versions of the engine. An interesting difference in 5.8 is that Epic extracted the shortcuts from the editor preferences to a new window called Shortcut Manager. It includes a very cool feature to search shortcuts by key. Let's start with the viewport. If you switch to an orthographic view, you can drag a selection box to select multiple actors. What's hidden is that you can do the same in perspective using the shortcut Ctrl-Alt-Left-click. Now, this can be a pain if you have a floor under the actors you want to select. To fix this, you can use this free plugin that allows you to make any actor of the outliner unselectable. In my case, I want to lock the floor and the sky sphere. If you need to select all the actors of the same class in your scene, just press Ctrl-Shift-A. Let's talk about pivot. When you want to change an actor's pivot, you can either go back to your DCC, use the modeling tool, or work with pivot offset. The latter lets you non-destructively move the pivot and snap it to your mesh vertices. Hold Alt-V and drag the pivot using the middle mouse button. I found out that it works better if you deal with each axis separately. Don't forget though to uncheck the grid snapping as it constrains the movement of your pivot. Once you're happy with the result, right-click on the actor and save the pivot offset. Speaking about vertices, if you want to snap an actor to another actor's vertices, hold V and left-click. This becomes naturally less effective the more vertices you have. For snapping, most people know about the snap to floor shortcut. The variation snaps the actor to the closest grid point. Be sure though to set your grid to the correct value. This one is very powerful when working with modular kits. Since we're talking about snapping, Unreal already comes with default shortcuts for tweaking the rotation and position grid sizes. On a QWERTY keyboard, left bracket and right bracket decrease and increase the position grid size. Hold Shift and those same keys adjust the rotation grid instead. I also recommend assigning shortcuts to toggle snapping on and off. To keep the layout consistent, I map these to the same keys with Ctrl. Ctrl left bracket toggles position snapping, while Ctrl right bracket toggles rotation snapping. On an AZERTY keyboard, the equivalent keys are caret for left bracket and $ for right bracket. Finally, buffer visualization is something I use constantly. I've mapped the different views to my numpad, allowing me to jump between the overview and the channels I use the most with Control and the numbers. I also assigned a few view mode to the numpad, but this time with Alt, keeping all my visualization shortcuts in the same area. Moving on to the editor itself. If you want to copy-paste an entire details panel section, use Shift right-click to copy and Shift left-click to paste. This one has been a huge time saver when I needed to transfer coordinates. If you forgot where an asset is located, just hit Ctrl P to search the whole project. Now let's look at the sequencer. To jump to the start of a playback range, press the up arrow. For the end, press Ctrl up arrow. Just like in the viewport, F is used to focus. In the sequencer, it frames the entire playback range. To move frame by frame, use the left and right arrow keys. Holding Shift moves by the amount specified in the jump frame increment setting. If I set it to 50, you can see that the jump is way bigger. If you need to go to a specific frame, press Ctrl T. And to quickly define your playback range, press left bracket to set the start and right bracket to set the end. On an AZERTY keyboard, the equivalent keys are again caret for left bracket and $ for right bracket. Finally, here are a few blueprint shortcuts I use all the time. You can delete a node without breaking the connection with Shift Delete. Compiling is probably the action you'll do the most in your blueprint editor. So instead of clicking the button, just press F7. Use Ctrl-Shift-F if you ever need to find a variable, function, or text across every blueprint in your project. Now, all of those are great, but if you don't practice, you won't use them. I recommend creating a reminder that would help you memorize. It can be a handwritten note or your desktop wallpaper. In my case, as I'm gathering more and more utilities over time, I would like to add this to my personal dev kit. A simple button to load an image of my new shortcuts will do just fine. If you want to do the same, it's pretty straightforward. First, be sure to have the Editor Scripting Utilities plugin enabled. Import your image and set its texture group to UI. Then create an in-editor utility widget and pick Scale Box. Open it, add an image and link it to your texture. Then, set the scale box to scale to fit. Compile, save, and that's it. You can now right-click and run the widget. To implement this in your own dev kit, add a button, change its name, make it a variable, and call the event onClicked. This will bring you to the main graph where you can get the editor utility subsystem. Drag the output of that node to the graph and get the node Spawn and Register tab. Finally, look for your shortcut widgets, compile, and save. You can dock this window wherever you want. If making your own dev kit is something you would like me to cover, tell me in the comments. Now, where are those shortcuts saved? Shortcuts are user preferences, and they are not stored in the project itself, but in your app data folder. The reason is they are bound to the current version of Unreal you use. To access it, use Windows R and type %local app data %. Open Unreal Engine, your current Unreal version, saved, config, and Windows Editor. Whenever you're changing the shortcuts, the editor key bindings file will be updated. As this file is bound to your engine, I recommend you to back it up. If for some reason you need to reinstall Unreal, you will lose all your mappings. Additionally, you'll have to copy-paste this file for every other version of the engine you use. To share your shortcuts with someone else, you can also extract them directly from the engine using the Export button in the Editor Preferences. On the other side, to sync the file to the engine, just click on the Import button. Beyond shortcuts, Unreal's settings hide a lot of quality of life improvement. I'll go over the ones that made the biggest difference for me, but don't hesitate to browse the settings related to the tools you use every day. Let's start with the editor preferences. Loading a level at startup can increase the time needed to open a project. I like to set the load level at startup to none by default and then change it later if needed. If like me you rely on stat FPS to monitor your performance, consider switching the show frame rate and memory setting on. This one will keep the frame rate at all times in the toolbar. I usually use several viewports when working with cameras. My level viewport sits on my main screen, while my camera view is on my second screen. This means that I don't need a preview of the select camera, so I turn this feature off. If you do rely on it, you can also make the preview size larger. On the subject of multiple screens, you can set the location where you want each new window to open. I personally like the last docked window on next window, but you can also dock everything on the main window. One setting that will fit perfectly with our compile shortcut is Save on Compile. Pick On Success Only to let Unreal automatically save whenever you compile an error-free blueprint. If you spend a lot of time disconnecting and reconnecting the same nodes, try setting the Allow Explicit Impure Node Disabling to True. This will allow you to right-click and disable node temporarily. To keep your favorite nodes quickly accessible, set the Context Menu Show Favorites section to True. This will bring above the list all your favorite nodes. Now, for the project settings. Every time I'm creating a new sequence, I always set the frame rate to 24 FPS and extend the duration of the shot. The good thing is that you can find those in the project settings. The default display rate is in Engine Level Sequence, and the default duration is in Editor Level Sequences. Many presets can also be customized in the project settings. This is the case for lenses, filmbacks or crop settings, which you can find in Engine Cinematic Camera. This allows you to modify the existing preset, but more importantly create your own. Let's make one for an Alexa Mini. I can add a new preset, give it a name, and then adjust the sensor settings using the reference available on VFX Camera database. Once it's saved, we can go back to the camera in our scene and open the filmback dropdown. The new preset is now available alongside the default ones. In the Plugins Level Sequence Editor section, you can define which track will be spawned when adding a new actor to the sequencer. Let's try with the skylight. I would like the skylight to always spawn with the intensity track, so we can add a default property track. We need a component path and a property path, so let's see what they are called in the sequencer. We add our skylight to the sequencer, and we can click on the plus button to add the component. The name is Skylight Component 0, and the property is Intensity. We can set those accordingly, and here we go. The skylight spawns with the property. When working in physically based lighting, I always put the exposure compensation to 0. I discovered that this property is driven by the auto exposure bias in engine rendering. Setting the default shape complexity to use simple collision as complex will make sure that the collision always puts performance first. You can then change this setting per asset if you need better collision. For the plugins, I love the console variables window, but I found it very confusing at first. Any CVAR you type will be added to the list, and loading a new preset will just add this preset to the current list. To fix this, I like to set the preset import mode to replace existing and add all changed console variable to current preset to false. This gives you a way better view of what is actually happening in each preset. Now, if we need to set all those settings for every new project, we're going to lose a lot of time. So how can we set them as default? This is where I need to introduce config files, which drive the settings of your projects. They can be edited simply through any text editor software, and you'll recognize them by their extension, .ini. When you create a new project, you'll mostly see 4 different files located in the config folder: default editor, default engine, default game, and default input. If you open default engine, it is already filled with text. The structure is always the same. Every config variables belong to a section indicated by brackets. The section matches the categories of settings you can find in Unreal, and the variable is always made of a key, the equal sign, and a value. If we take the r.GenerateMeshDistance field key, for instance, we see that it's set to true and belongs to the Engine Renderer Settings section. In the project settings, we'll find the same key with the same value. For the test, let's close Unreal, edit this variable to false, and reopen it. You can see that the setting has been changed accordingly. One of the first things I change in every project is the invert middle mouse pan. It can be toggled in the viewport toolbar or in the editor preferences under viewport. Like any other setting you tweak, it should be stored in the config files. However, you won't find it in the default engine or default editor. Instead, it is stored in the editor per project user settings, located in Saved, Config, Windows Editor. The reason is, Epic considers this to be a user-specific preference. Multiple people can work on the same project, and you probably don't want to change the way the editor works for them. To handle cases like this, Unreal uses a 3-layer configuration hierarchy. At the base are the engine config files, which define Unreal's default settings. Above them are the project default config files, which are shared with everyone working on a project. Finally, at the top are the user config files, which only affect your local editor. Each layer overrides the one below it. So if the same setting is defined in multiple configuration files, Unreal will always use the value from the highest layer. So, for our middle mouse span setting, we have two options. We can permanently set the variable in the engine config file, or create a user config file to carry throughout projects. The first option is messy, as we need to dive into the files that contain a huge amount of data, and I'm not very fond of changing the engine files. The second is a bit more easy to maintain, but it also adds an extra step to replace config files on every new project. Fortunately, Unreal comes with a feature that is going to take care of all of this and more. Settings are not the only thing you want to carry throughout projects. Over the years, I've noticed I spend a lot of time building the same assets and setups from scratch. This includes master materials, functions, movie render settings, or even the mannequin mesh for scale. These are the assets I want to have in every project I'm working on. This is where the template system becomes really useful. By default, Unreal already provides a couple of them that can be a good starting point. But how do we create our own template? This process is pretty straightforward and very easy to maintain. Firstly, you need to create and set a project the way you want it to be at startup. This applies to the assets, but also the settings of the project itself. The balance here is to only keep what you use in every single project. If a setup is cool but too specific, you shouldn't include it in your template. Beyond the assets themselves, the folder structure is also important. Every new project will be built on that foundation, so taking the time to organize it properly from the start can save a lot of time later. This idea can also be extended into creating your own style sheet, a document that defines the way you work. It can include naming conventions, folder structures, and general rules that help you stay organized and make collaboration with others easier. That being said, you don't have to create everything from scratch. I built my own style sheet by following Allah's guide, which is a great reference point. Let me know if this is something you'd like me to cover in more detail in a future video. Once the project is ready, make a backup and copy it into Unreal's templates folder. By default, this folder is located in C, Programs, Epic Games, Your Unreal Version, Template. Before turning it into a template, we need to clean up the project. Delete the DDC and intermediate folders, as well as everything inside saved except the configuration files. In the end, your template should only contain the content, config, and saved folder. The last step is to copy the template def.ini from an already existing template and edit it. Let's pick the one from the third-person blueprint folder. This file controls how your template appears and behaves in the new project window. At the top, you can see the category that defines where your template will appear. In our case, we'll leave that to games. As I'm using the English version of Unreal and I'm keeping this template for myself, I will personally remove the localized entries. I can then set the display name and description. Because we are keeping some settings inside the saved folder, we also need to remove the line folders to ignore equals saved. The two other things we should remove are the variants and shared content packs, as these add additional dependencies to the template. Finally, to add a custom icon and a preview image, create a media folder and place them inside. Rename them using Unreal's expected naming convention and make sure they are saved as PNG files. Once everything is done, save the file and launch Unreal. You should now see your custom template available in the new project window. One final thing to keep in mind. If you work across multiple Unreal versions, always create your template using the oldest version you need to support. You can then update it for newer versions. What about content that you want to keep available without including it in every single project? Once again, Unreal provides a system that can help with that. Feature and content packs are two similar systems that you can directly add to your project from the content browser. While a content pack only contains assets like meshes, materials, or textures, a feature pack comes with systems, blueprints, and edit the settings of your project to fit the new features. This system is very clean and well designed from a user experience perspective. However, the process of creating and maintaining one of these packs is much more complicated than a simple template. While exploring different approaches, I found a solution that offers much more flexibility and personally works better for me. Content-only plugins may sound intimidating, but they are actually very easy to set up. They don't require any programming knowledge, and unlike templates, they live outside of your projects. That's what makes them so useful. You can browse their content before importing anything and migrate only the assets you need. So let's create one. First, open the plugin window, click on the Add button and the Content-only preset. Fill in the plugin's name, the author, and the description, then click on Create Plugin. By default, it is stored in your current project. In the plugins window, you'll notice a new project category containing your plugin. This is where you can configure its properties, edit its metadata, and add dependencies. For example, I want this plugin to automatically enable my PBL database plugin whenever it's activated. Adding content is even simpler. Unreal automatically creates a folder with your plugin's name in the content browser. From there, just drag in the assets you want to keep. For this example, I'll move a collection of material functions. To make this plugin accessible in all projects, we need to move it from the project into the engine. Go back to the plugins window and click Package. You can now place the generated files in the plugins folder of your current Unreal version. By default, it is located at C, Programs, Epic Games, 5.7, Engine, Plugins. Finally, you can now retrieve the assets from your new plugin in any other project using Unreal 5.7. For this, just enable Custom Library in the Plugins window, restart the engine, and look for the plugin in the engine folder of the content browser. You can then select exactly what you want from the plugin's content and copy only those assets into your project. Putting all of this together takes a bit of effort, but it's an investment that will save you a lot of time down the line. Once everything is in place, maintaining the system is simple. For me, the perfect moment to make this change is between two projects, when you're not in the middle of a production and you can make mistakes. To recap, you need to keep three things in your toolset. First, a template that keeps your settings, folder structure, and project foundation consistent. Second, a content-only plugin that acts as a personal library of assets ready to be reused when needed. Third, a shortcut config file that you can import in any other new Unreal version. If you'd like a head start, I'm sharing my own project template along with both my AZERTY and QWERTY shortcut configurations. You'll find everything in the description. I hope this video was useful to you, and I will see you in the next one.